till now have something that measures pain. So, what migraines or headaches do is they affect your quality of life. Everybody is suffering in some way or the other. 10 seconds of mindfulness meditation a day can make a difference. So women definitely suffer from it at a much more degree. Pumping all those hormones into you, then getting heartbreak each time. It does take a mental toll, it does take a physical toll. I could have put in more effort into my career, but I was putting in effort to get pregnant also. So that one can look back and say, oh, you could have done much more.
Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of Unlayering. Today, we have Dr. Sonia Lal Gupta with us, who's a director at Metro Hospital. She's a neurologist with specialization in headache, something that we consider so normal, right? Why do we even need to be treated for it? But guess what? There are 300 types of headaches, and she has simple solutions for us to deal with them and to prevent them. Lifestyle is such an important thing and plays an important role. So let's see what she has to say about busting some myths about headaches, improving our lives, and also how she manages her personal life while being a professional and entrepreneur and a mother. Let's unlayer everything that she has to say. Hi, Dr. Sonia. You definitely don multiple feathers in your cap. She's a neurologist, a health advocate, and she's also the co founder of Voice of Health, a channel that influences everyone who's looking for health advice, and that's available on social media free of cost. And she's a headache specialist, something that we thought is just a normal phenomenon occurring in each one of our lives. But we didn't really know that even actually had to be cured at any point. And she's a times 40 under 40. And every day she's just aspiring to make healthcare better in India and for maximum people to benefit from it. So thank you for coming today. And we are excited to unlayer your story.
Thank you. Hi, Apeksha. Thanks for having me. And I'm very excited to know how you will unlayer me.
There's so many facets, but let's just start. Yeah. So I believe you come from a family of doctors, right? So was becoming a doctor a choice for you, or was it just predestined?
So, I always say that I was destined to be a doctor before even I was conceived. That's like a joke I make, but my dad is an interventional cardiologist and very well renowned. So I think when there was no option, I think, and we come from that era where doctor and engineer was that option given. And so, to be honest, for the longest time, I did not even know there was another career path. My mom, of course, had done her MBA, but still the focus was medicine always. And but I don't regret it one bit. I think given a chance, I would still do it all over again because I love what I do. So, but yeah, I think I was always predestined to be a doctor. Is something I always say.
So that's insane. So why don't you walk us through your childhood, your educational background, and your journey from being in India, moving
Yes,
overseas, and then coming back here
right.
to establish
Yeah,
yourself
so
again?
so I did my schooling in India. I mean, we were initially in the States, but then we moved back when I was just a few years old. And after that, my entire schooling was in India. Then I went to Medical College of Patiala for my med school, and I think that was a great experience. So when we talk about hostels and getting out of a protective environment, getting to the nitty gritties of learning not just medicine, but actually I think getting exposed to different elements of life with other people and how people look at things. So that was a great experience. And then decided to go to the US to do further education. So we'd give a licensing exam called the USMLEs. So gave that and had fortunately got neurology. Always wanted to do neurology and had the chance to do that. So I was in New York for 4 years, did my residency during that time, and admits that in the last year of my residency, before 6 months it ended, I got married. My husband is an interventional cardiologist. At that time, he was doing his medicine at Penn State in Hershey, and then later on, he moved to Tampa. So he was in Tampa. So one field of neurology that I was completely fascinated by, and I thought was one field which is a complaint which is very common, but not everybody likes to treat it or doesn't know how to treat it, was headache medicine. And fortunately, Tampa had a very good headache program. And fortunately, I was able to get into that. So I moved there to Tampa and I was there for a year. I did my headache fellowship. Again, I think that program was, we had a headache program that was booked out for 9 months. That's how busy they were, and that's how common headaches are. I think people don't realize. So, everybody who suffers from headaches, they don't realize how common it is, and how much people are suffering from it and how it affects your quality of life. But it does. That's why there's a fellowship. So, imagine if there's a specialization for it. Obviously, right? It's a field that impacts people. And believe it or not, there are more than 300 types of headaches. So, so that was a great experience. I think I found one of my greatest mentors of my life during this fellowship, Dr. Wilson, and I'll always be thankful to her because, when you're in a country where you're, different, end of the day, you have to work a little extra hard when you're not from that particular country and you're Indian or any other ethnicity to say that. And I think she kind of showed that path, even though I'd already done my residency. But I think working with her, just the way how she treated her patients, how she spoke to them. Like certain people in your life leave that impact. And even during residency, I had like just how you talk to someone. And it all boils down to, I think, how you talk to your patient, which a lot of people in medicine sometimes don't realize that just talk, you know, yeah, say just talk with love to that person and a lot of things will be better. So great experience working with her. Then we moved to Chicago. Samir was doing his interventional cardiology there at University of Chicago. So I decided to work for a year as assistant professor of neurology at Loyola University. And I had the opportunity to train headache fellows during this time. So they had a headache fellowship. And again, that was a great experience because I was pretty young. I was only 27 at that time. And the students I was training were, 10 years older to me or, almost 15 years older to me.
So, how was that experience?
I think it was fun because the key is you have to be confident. If you know what you're doing, then you can teach the other person. And I
But it's harder for older people to actually respect younger people and to look up to them as their mentors or teachers, right? So, especially in men, I feel
yeah,
there is an ego clash.
true, true. And I think that's the beauty of the US, that people decide to go into an education and at any point, so they know they might be dealing with younger people, and I think that never comes in the way. In India, we definitely see that
Yeah.
bias, and it's very blatant. I'm older, I'm younger, I'm more experienced, but I did not feel that once uh, with my headache fellow that I was training at that time. And he had a lovely story where he was a teacher. Initially, he was in the army, then he was a teacher, and then he decided, you know what? At the age of 30, that I don't want to do all this. He went to a career counselor who said you should be a doctor for the person that you are. He went to med school, did a neurology residency, and then was doing a headache fellowship. And a very gentle guy. So I think I never really got that feeling from him. And he always had full regards and respect for me. In fact, it used to be really fun. I'm not really the tallest person. And so I'm like this 5 foot something person, and he was 6 foot 2. And he would go and meet the patients before, and then I would go strutting in that I'm Dr. Lal, I'm the attending. And I still remember that they would be like, okay, like, what's happening here? Shouldn't it be the opposite way? So I think that was uh, just a fun experience. Learned a lot during that experience, and then moved to New York again because Samir wanted to do his endovascular fellowship. So at that point, I had an option of maybe working or doing another fellowship. But another field that really fascinated me was strokes. So then I
Oh,
decided to do my fellowship in vascular neurology
wow.
because headaches and stroke, they're completely in the opposite spectrums. One is a completely inpatient field while the other is a completely
Mhm.
outpatient field. But I think that's the beauty of why I wanted to do it. So I had a choice of whether I wanted to stay inpatient or outpatient. At least that choice was mine, and not dictated by what field I'm doing.
Yeah.
So then after that we moved back to India a few months later, and
So
yeah.
then this, I mean, you've done multiple fellowships.
Yeah.
is it easier to do this abroad than it is in India? Because I feel here people have that fixed mindset that, okay, I need to do this, then I will do my specialization, and then I do my super specialization, right? Like
Right.
that's the path
Right.
that people trod upon. They don't really move much. So is that because they are not given this flexibility here, or the flexibility is there, but they don't want to waste their time?
I think we grow up in a mindset in a country, don't waste time,
Yeah.
right? You see other countries, you see people in other countries, they take sabbaticals.
Hmm.
They'll take a year off to travel.
Yeah.
Think of that concept in India. Even if you tell your family, a lot of the family members will say, "Have you lost your mind? How can you
Hmm.
waste a year?
Yeah.
How can you waste a year?" And I think that mindset is so ingrained, not wasting time. That people have a tough time letting go of that. And I think it's just that cultural bias.
Hmm.
In India, it's almost like survival of the fittest. We're
Yeah.
just too many people.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just too many people. And I think everybody wants to achieve, everybody wants to do. So that survival of the fittest mentality, I think, gets you going all the time. And that's why when Indians go to the US also, they continue to study. It's not that they will take a break and say, you know what, let me
Mm-hmm.
just take a break for a
Yeah.
few months.
Yeah.
We do a residency, then we want to do our fellowships, then we want to join work, then we want to maybe study more. We want to do everything.
So the cycle just
The cycle
continues.
kind of just continues, and I think both countries have their own experience.
Mm.
I think people in India also get an amazing experience. It's just that when you in either countries, let's say I studied in the US and then you come to India or vice versa, it's great to widen your horizons,
Yeah.
to go to another country, because you learn so much about people and culture and how things are done. Like in America, mental health issues are so
Mm.
much more accepted.
Yeah.
I still remember one of my first patients, this young girl sitting in front of me, very confidently told me, I have bipolar. Oh, in India, would you ever find a young person, even till date, tell me very confidently that I have bipolar? No.
Yeah.
Bipolar is such a major diagnosis for our country. Why there it is so much more accepted. I'm happy that now maybe issues like anxiety,
Hmm.
thanks to I think our celebrities, is
Yeah.
becoming more acceptable, but there's still long ways to go. And when you come to the nitty gritty of it, I think so it's just they're two different cultures. So I think it's not easy or hard, it's a choice you make.
Mm-hmm.
People when they go there, they do have to adjust to a completely different culture as
Yeah.
well. And but I think it's an amazing experience, and that's what I tell everybody. If you can go abroad, or if you can go to a different place out of your comfort
Hmm.
zone, because you will learn so much and it helps you develop a lot as a person,
Yeah.
more than anything else
Mhm.
apart from learning.
True. So, you just spoke about anxiety being more acceptable here because of celebrities. So, the most common things that we hear about are depression and
Mm.
anxiety. Depression is being talked about so normally. If you're feeling low, you'll be like, oh, I'm feeling so depressed. But do you think that this term should be used so commonly? Like, does it take away the true essence of that disease, right? If you talk about it so commonly, कि आज अच्छा नहीं रहा मुझे तो depression हो रहा है.
Right.
So there is a clinical diagnosis for it, right? It
A-
shouldn't be.
Absolutely. I think this is such an important question. I think at a certain level now, people are taking it as a norm. Emotions are normal. Everybody needs to understand. Even feeling anxious is normal. But to what level of anxiety where you cannot handle it is what is people have to understand. Feeling sad is normal, crying is normal, feeling happy is normal, laughing is normal, feeling excited is normal. So I think people need to accept that you cannot be ha ha all the time, and you cannot be low all the time. And these are emotions that we all have. Look at young babies. They go through so many emotions in a day. So if a child is crying, you can't say, oh, the child is depressed. It's just an emotion the child is showing. So I think people need to understand that if they are feeling low, why are they feeling low? Is it an emotion tied to some event that has occurred for maybe a short duration or that particular day? Then no, they are not depressed. Depression is a clinical diagnosis. There are a lot of certain criterias that people have to meet to come to the diagnosis of having clinical depression. and then accordingly treatment can be done. And the ones who have clinical depression should not shy away from treatment. When people have diabetes or high blood pressure, it's a chemical imbalance, right? So we give medication to restore that balance and they take it. But if they will continue having, let's say somebody has blood pressure, they will take the medication and they'll continue having a big bowl of salt. Do you think that medication will work? Not at all. Same is with anxiety. I think same is with depression. If you are diagnosed with clinical anxiety or depression of any, and there is a treatment for it, remember that the treatment is important. People shy away. People come to me and say, "मुझे दवाई नहीं चाहिए." Why are you hesitant? I try to explain to them that there is a level that your brain is not able to adapt to. These medicines will help you adapt to that. But that is why it's important. I know people try very hard where they try therapy, which is great. I think therapy is one of the most beautiful things. Everybody needs therapy in this world nowadays. I think people underestimate it so much. I kind of call them life coaches. Therapists basically are kind of life coaches for everyone. They guide them, they help them. A lot of times people are not comfortable talking to their families. So I think this, it's important to understand that even with anxiety, when you're trying your best, without medication, it's okay to take medication too, along with therapy, along with social connect, along with taking help from people. It's that combined approach which works. And I'm telling you, Peksha, people lives change. They feel better, they feel back to normal. But at the same time, it should not be taken as a joke. As you said, oh, I'm feeling depressed too. So I think they need to respect that mental health is actually, it's a real issue, and we should treat it as a real issue and help. And I think the more awareness we spread about it, more people will accept it. COVID has brought, I think, more acceptability because people were locked in. No socialization leads to a lot of, feeling low, maybe depression, maybe anxiety. A lot of anxiety has come out. So I think that acceptability has increased where people accept it more. But I still say the proper awareness is still not
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people associate mental condition with being an absolute goner.
there.
राइट दे बी राइट मैं पागल थोड़ी ना हूँ जो
Correct.
मुझे थेरेपिस्ट के
True.
पास जाना है
True.
और व्हाई शुड आई टेक मेडिसिन
Yeah.
it's a world of the unknown that still people are finding hard to actually step into to accept their problem.
You're absolutely right. Just yesterday I had a patient. That's why I think I remember it very clearly. This young 18-year-old girl comes in and she has headaches. Now, headaches don't always have to have a clinical cause. Sometimes they can be psychosomatic symptoms secondary to an underlying depression or anxiety, which she had. She had clinical depression. She has had suicidal ideations in the past, but she cannot tell her family that she wants to go to a psychiatrist. She wanted help, but it was very difficult for her to go to a psychiatrist. And she wanted, and me and the psychiatrist, I convinced her that at least go once, at least, in a hospital, and we'll see you free of cost. That's absolutely fine. Let's help you out. Use that money you have towards therapy also. But imagine if this young girl who wants to get treatment, but it's still not accepted because she is worried that her parents will say, "नहीं तुम तो ठीक हो, you're fine, you don't have anything, ऐसे ही करते हो, खुश रहा करो." That
Hmm.
this
Yeah,
this
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 is a
line that
common
is
phrase.
used, the common phrase,
Yeah,
खुश रहा करो.
कि हमारे टाइम पे तो हमें
हाँ,
जरूरत नहीं थी
हाँ,
हम तो बड़े हो
हाँ, हम
गए
तो बड़े, हम तो ठीक है. And headaches, I see this so much with migraines and headaches also. But when sometimes people suffer because all these things sometimes go hand in hand, where the family says that even I have migraines. हमें तो नहीं ऐसा होता. We don't feel this way. Then why is she doing like this? Or why is he feeling this way? So definitely, I think that awareness still needs to be separated. Where maybe in the biggest cities, that acceptability is still there, and that too at a very top layer. If we actually dig down deep, it is still not acceptable. People are still thought to be crazy. when they talk about mental health. And there's so much when it comes to diagnosis. I think it's so much beyond depression and anxiety. There are personality disorders, there are clinical disorders that can be treated with the right medication and lives can change. I think it's just a matter of seeking out help and spreading that awareness.
Do you think that we are so conditioned by the society that sometimes, even if we are going through these things, like you said, that headache is so prevalent, right? But it might indicate towards an underlying condition. So we are so conditioned that we feel that ठीक है, normal है, headache है, migraine है. And especially women, I feel they suffer more from migraines than men. Why is that the case?
So women are found to have more migraines than men. A lot of it is to do with their hormonal balance. Hormones play a role in migraines. That's why we have terms like menstrual migraines, women who especially have migraines around their periods, or women who have maybe migraines or headaches around their PMSing time. A lot of times during pregnancy, post pregnancy, all those hormonal changes they play a role. And I think people, again, it's just how we are conditioned. A headache or pain, even in general, is something that is not visible. Now, let's say somebody got a cut on their hand, it's a visible injury. So people will give you sympathy. Hi, some this person has had a cut. Oh, they've had a fracture. But headache or pain of any sorts is not a visible injury. So it's very difficult sometimes for people to explain why I'm suffering so much. And people make it an excuse because we don't till now have something that measures pain. If we had something that could measure pain, I think it would help people who are suffering. That look, this person genuinely has pain. A lot of times people will say, ये तो ऐसे ही बोल रहा है, ये तो ऐसे ही बोल रही है. She just wants to lie down. you know we go to her home, she ties her head with a chunni, and she just lies down. So that mentality is so much still there. So then people who are suffering also don't want to complain because they say if I complain, people will not take me seriously. But it's a real condition. It's one of the biggest causes of disability in the world. And the big news is it can be treated and it can be managed. And it's just that people don't go to doctors for their headaches. They'll go to the pharmacy. They'll take a medication from them, or they'll ask their family and friends and just keep popping painkillers throughout their lives. But they will not go to a proper doctor when the fact is we have preventive medications to help prevent these headaches. We have preventive medicine so that these attacks don't happen. And but I think it's just that people take it as part of life, unfortunately.
I think that's how we've grown up to be, right? I mean,
Yeah,
even when we've seen our mothers, they've had headaches, but they've continued with their
true.
lives. We've had headaches in school.
Yeah,
Teachers would tell us, put your head down, you'll be
correct,
fine.
correct.
We were never sent to the clinic to get a medicine for it. So, sorry, but you just said that headaches are the major cause of disability as well. Like, how is that correlated? And
So what is a migraine? Let's just take migraines. They're one of the most common types of headaches. So when somebody gets a migraine, uh, although it's a little bit more scientific, I'll explain. So basically, a lot of times it's one-sided or bilateral throbbing headache with nausea, light sensitivity, noise sensitivity. All you want to do is shut your eyes, shut your lights, tell everybody to keep quiet and lie down. And it can be anywhere from 4 hours to 72 hours in a so that is typically what a migraine is. So just think about it. Up to 3 days of a person's life can get affected. A lot of times when people have migraines, they cannot function. They push themselves and then they just make it worse. So they need to lie down to feel better. So what is affected at that time? Your quality of life. Now let's say you're working, you're unable to work, you need to take the day off from work. Nobody will understand at work why you're taking that day off, but you've just lost a day of work. Let's say you run out of your holidays, now you're just losing pay for that day, right? Or you've run out of your sick leave. Then, personal life. Your kids were planning to go out, you all were planning to go out on a family dinner, and oh no, you're suddenly down with a migraine. Your personal life is affected. So, what migraines or headaches do is they affect your quality of life. They're not going to kill you, but they're affecting your quality of life, your day-to-day quality of life, and that is what affects causes is a cause of disability. What does disability mean? Then I'm unable to function to my utmost level. And disability doesn't always have to be physical. I think that's where that conception is that you have to have some physical deformity or some physical inability to say you're disabled. No, it can be at different levels. It can be taking different medical conditions into play, whether it is headaches, whether it is even mental health. People who are really depressed sometimes cannot get out of their house for months. That is also a form of disability. And we see that at times. And I think all of us have at some point known such people where they've been affected. And then you look back and say, how much could you have actually done to help them? And maybe you haven't, or maybe not taken out time for them. But it is a real cause of disability. The other problem is when we say disability, it also affects not only yourself, but your family members also. It affects, if you're not going out, your kids are not going out, your husband's not going out, your partner's not going out. And right there, your entire everybody's affected. And a lot of times when people come to see me, the partners with them who might be a little bit more perturbed with the fact that they're suffering so much. So a lot of times they don't come in, their partners bring them in, that they are suffering, men or women, both. To give that support and say, this person is suffering so much for the past 15 years. And imagine after 15 years, they decide to take help. And for those 15 years, they have been suffering.
And they would have lost a larger chunk of quality of life, right?
Sometimes they lose their entire mid 30s, 40s in this pain. And they don't do anything, to really get help. They just keep on popping, over the counter medications that are easily available and kind of just running through when they could have done so much. Lifestyle, they could have done so much. A lot of times people don't realize it's lifestyle, haphazard sleep cycles, not drinking enough water, something so simple and something so ignored. Like nowadays, it's peak heat wave time that's going on in North India, but people are still not drinking enough water. So, drinking enough water, small things like that, exercising, meditating, they all play a role in helping you prevent headaches, helping your quality of life. But people want a quick solution. That's the other side of it. That takes effort, that takes time. But nowadays, we're in a new era of quick solution as well.
Cool. Like the other day, we were having this discussion about instant gratification, right? आपने अभी दवाई खा ली and you're fine and you're out of the bed and you're ready to party. Right. That's what you want, a quick fix solution.
We see that in this generation, unfortunately. Now the young children who are coming in their 20s, um they all, even when it comes to jobs, we interview people all the time, for because we hold multiple leadership positions, and people are wanting instant. They want the higher salary right away, or they want, the best of the benefits. That instant gratification everybody wants. And I think social media somewhere played that role, because people see lives that they perceive are perfect. But wake up, everybody, not nobody has perfect lives. Everybody is suffering in some way or the other. There's always a balance. That's how the circle of life is. No matter how perfect somebody's life might be, you never know what's actually going on the other end. So I think the grass is greener on the other side is true. But these young children don't get it, and they see this life, that perfect life on social media. That's led to, I think, a lot of also body dysmorphic syndrome images, body image, image issues. How much we see that nowadays, uh, in young girls, in young boys. Boys get ignored, but we see this in boys as well. I think everybody thinks about young girls all the time, but it's more sometimes even common in men. And they get bullied more. We just don't realize it in these young boys, that how much they get bullied at times, and how affected they are.
I think everyone is just struggling to get that perfect life, right? That is the only aspiration. But when you ask someone, ki, okay, what is it that you want from your life? You just say, I want a perfect life. But what's the definition of that perfect life? No one knows. You're just headed towards something without even knowing whether it exists or not. And you're constantly beating yourself up for it. You're constantly sad you're in that race, that you're just running. ये नहीं पता कहाँ जाना है.
True. We see it all the time, right? And everybody sees it around. I think it's not just money, right? If we say that people are just running after
नहीं.
money, it's not that. I think if people are running only after happiness, it's not that. I think people
They're
actually
just
don't
running.
know. They're just running. They want, and I think they're going after a perception of something in their head, which they are not also sure of. but they want to achieve that. They're looking for that level of happiness, but that level of happiness is not defined. I think nobody can even
True,
describe what that
true.
level of happiness
Yeah.
is. So I think it's I think people need to start. That's why meditation, it's becoming such a big thing and people don't take out time for it, but I always say take out those 3 to 5 minutes. It gives you a lot more I think insight on maybe what you're looking for. There's so much data that 10 seconds of mindfulness meditation a day can make a difference. What is 10 seconds? 10 seconds less on Instagram, I think that's okay, right?
That's a good trade-off.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah. But do you personally practice meditation?
Sometimes I'm not the, I think, practice what you preach. I try to, I should, I whenever I can, I do try to take out a couple of minutes to at least do some deep breathing from day to day. But I think I should, that dedicated time I should be able to take out, which I admit it's very bad. I'm admitting this. My patients will say she keeps on giving us this
Yeah.
lecture on meditation.
Maybe this will motivate you to
I,
meditate.
but I should take out more time. I try to definitely whatever time I can. I think even a few minutes in a day, and that's why I say even a few minutes. Even when I'm sitting in my car, if I can just take out those 2 minutes. There are a lot of apps nowadays. I love Headspace, so I think that's one app. I say just take out 2 minutes and just try to even breathe for 2 minutes. It just gives you a lot of even those 2 minutes can give you a lot of calming, which can help you kind of go about your day.
So, since we spoke about perfection and having a perfect life, I'm sure, like, on a personal front and even career wise, right, the graph is not always a straight one, it's always going up and down. So, when has your idea of a perfect life been actually broken, wherein you came back to reality, which was really hard hitting for you?
I think one big hit in my life personally was maybe suffering from infertility, right? You kind of assume getting pregnant, it's going to happen. It happens to everybody, it'll happen to me. And I think when I hit, because initially being in this profession, you don't plan kids right away in your, I got married in my late 20s, and you don't plan right away. You're still studying. You want to plan it maybe when you're in your 30s. And then you kind of just assume, of course I'll get pregnant. What's the big deal? Everybody's doing it, and everybody around you is getting pregnant. Now you don't know their journey, but you're assuming that they got it easily, right? And I think when infertility happened, when we started struggling and we started seeing that, I think that was a big hit for me at a personal level, where you have to first come to terms with the fact that you're suffering from it, and now you have to take a different path, which is not an easy path. It's not an impossible path, I would say, and a lot of, I think, people are now going for it. It's become more common. I think again people are more accepting of the fact, but infertility is real, and I we suffer from unexplained infertility, which basically is every test under the sun is normal, so basically, nobody knows what's wrong with you and why you're not conceiving. So then you're literally working with your doctors trying to figure out what to do. And having gone through, I think, multiple cycles, and then you're like, okay, I have infertility. Let's do IVF. And first
Hmm.
cycle will be done. And then you fail. And then you say, okay, koi baat nahi, it's okay. Second cycle, and I'll be done. And then that fails. And so that is where I think when it comes to a personal level, I think you kind of realize that not everything goes as planned. And we did suffer. We went through infertility. We suffered for almost 7 years. We went through 7 cycles, 7 years and 7 cycles, and then finally it worked out. And now we have, a child, a boy is almost 3 year old, and I always say touch wood, but yeah, it's. I think that's been an arduous journey. Now you look back, you forget everything, but to go through a process of having, I would say, at least more than 1,000 injections to get here, probably. And you get so used to it. Needles don't scare you anymore. All those things are very small. Pain becomes, and mentally it affects you, physically it affects you. I think women definitely suffer from it at a much more degree, not to take away from men. I think it's a journey that couples go together, but women definitely, because they are the ones. It is what it is. Now let's come to the reality of it. We are the ones having the uterus, so we are going to be carrying the baby, so we will undergo that procedure, right? So, um, putting pumping all those hormones into you, then getting heartbreak each time. It does take a mental toll, it does take a physical toll. But then I think that's where in life you have to learn that life is never perfect. You have to pick up, gather, and start fighting again. And I think whatever the situation is, and we see that with people when it comes to their career path may not go as planned. Maybe while going through this journey, it wasn't as perfect, in terms of I could have put in more effort into my career, but I was putting in effort to get pregnant also. So that one can look back and say, oh, you could have done much more. Of course, that's always there. What if is a term we all live with, right? What if? But what if that didn't work out? What if that assumption that what if you had done that would have been better, and to live with that regret of what if is something we have to get over. And I think everybody, nobody will admit, but everybody somewhere knows that this is true when they listen to it. Everybody goes through what if. What if I had not taken that decision at that point in my life? But that is not how it works. At every point in your life, usually you have two choices and you pick a path. Whether they say destined or whether a choice, you pick that path and then your journey is written on that path. Then try your best to maneuver it and it will work out. There's no reason why it will not. But you have to be patient. You have to fight battles. And we see people suffering, I mean, I say our suffering is very little compared to what we see sometimes being in healthcare, what people suffer from. And it's amazing journeys, how people fight back and come out as winners and continue and go on with their lives. But yeah, I think for me, I would say that that was. And then, of course, my pregnancy wasn't as smooth as, you see all these pictures of the, women having such amazing pregnancies and no problem at all. And they say, and then, you are put on, I was on bed rest for almost 6 months of my pregnancy. So, where eventually, of course, I could walk around my room, but I couldn't, I wasn't like jumping around and going on baby
So,
moons and
did
doing all that
social
stuff
media
that you
have an
see.
impact on your mental health while you were pregnant?
You see other people, and no matter who you are and how much uh, lecture you can give to somebody, when it comes to yourself, it's human nature. You want, you're like, why not me? Again, that's another thing people do. Why not me? Or why me? Why me? Why am I suffering? Why is everybody else having a good one? But again, you don't know what they're going through. Maybe somebody's having gestational diabetes, you just don't know about it. Or maybe somebody's having high blood pressure in their pregnancy and you just don't know about it. So, and you don't even know their journey of how they got pregnant or what they went through. Maybe they were on bed rest in their first trimester, you just don't know about it. So I think nobody has a perfect life. Nobody. Whatever it may seem. Then I think people need to understand that. Don't go by social media. It's just a perception of what people are doing, and people are just sharing a part of their lives. But nobody is sharing their lives round the clock, and nobody knows what's actually happening. So, yeah, so I think that accepting that fact is very important.
That's crazy. So, you had a tough journey through that. And how did you pick yourself back up? Like, I'm sure when you were on bed rest, for a person like you who's doing multiple things at a time, right? You're running multiple ventures at a time. For you to be restricted to a room, just to a bed, how did that time feel, and how was it like to jump back after the delivery and after finally being okay?
Yeah. So, initially, I think when I was first told bed rest, it hit me. I was not happy, obviously. Like, oh my God, I'm going to be now, I won't be able to work or I won't be going to work because we are again in a field where we usually interact with people. And by chance, it was during COVID, all of this happened. And it was right around between the first and second wave, all this was happening. So, anyhow, I was a little restricted in my movement because I finally got pregnant. So, it was a precious pregnancy. So, you can imagine the family around me, the doctors around me, everybody. Don't do this, don't do that. I used to go for walks, and it took, like, everybody exercises. And I remember when I in my first trimester, which went fine, I started walking, like doing more exercise. Everybody was like, don't do more exercise, you just don't know, although they were all myths. But it is what it is, right? And Mm, eventually I realized, now looking back also, those 6 months that I got never come back, right? I mean, that was that one time where I was relaxing completely. And I will tell people who are on bed rest, just take it in a positive way. I regretted it that time. And I remember when the second wave came, I was on my bed on the phone 24/7, helping people out, telling them. I used to joke that my baby will come out saying COVID, 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 because I was treating so many people right on call and trying to help out people, trying to coordinate things. But I think we don't realize it's very important, to live in that, to relish each moment. When I sometimes do meditate and when I listen, the Headspace app, Andy Padikum is the founder, and he also does, Nike Run Club. He has a lot of series in that as well. And one thing he always says that every time as human beings, we think of the past, we think of the future, but we don't relish that now, that moment that we are in. So it's, I think, very important. And I think I reached a point during that bed rest time where I realized that this time will not come back. And once I have a baby, I'm always going to be busy. And so then I think eventually I took it in a positive way that it's okay. And that's why then I decided to take another 9 months off post my baby, that it's okay. This 1.5 year of my life that I'm taking out, maybe for my kid or for me, it, it will not affect me in the long run. And when I will look back when I'm 70, will that 1 year actually make a difference? It will not. It already doesn't. And it's amazing how the human mind forgets. When you overcome a stage in your life, even though you might have memories about it, but your brain stops processing it in terms of that sadness or guilt. When you think about it, you might feel yes, but it's not something that keeps on coming back. But there are people where it does, and that's where then, post traumatic depression or those kind of things do come in, and people stress disorder,
Yeah.
where people sometimes still have the struggle kind of with it. But otherwise,
You feel like a third
fortunately,
person narrating a
yeah,
story.
correct, correct. But I think, fortunately, I was able to overcome it. I had my baby. That, because when you're a new mom, you're as scared as you can be. You're responsible for this little human being, which is your human being. I always say that, you're making your own human
Yeah, yeah.
in a way, right? So here, and this is your little human. You are responsible for them. You have to ensure they're taken care of well. So it's a beautiful journey, and I tell people, you'll get back to work eventually, and life will, and you'll do, you achieve your goals, you'll run, but relish that moment. These babies will never be that small again, and as they grow, it's such an amazing journey. I think for me, motherhood was also fascinating as a neurologist, because I just saw how my brain transformed. Like, I would be worried when I got pregnant, like, how can I be a good mother? Everybody goes through that emotion that, how will I do it? How will I take care of this baby? And will my mindset actually change? Because I was into my career. I loved working, everything. But it's amazing how there's actually a mom brain that develops, and how things, you just start prioritizing, and it's not an effort, it's automatic. And I think a lot of women will vouch for it, that it is automatic. I think an effort is your work. Where your effort comes in is actually your work, taking out time to work, because that's, you're doing it for yourself. Also, maybe you're doing it for yourself, but work, I think every person does it for themselves. It gives them that mental satisfaction
True.
to achieve.
Yeah.
And so I think, motherhood, in terms of how your brain evolves, has been amazing. How babies grow, it's amazing. I think, every month how they
So, do
develop,
you do a lot of psychological analysis on your baby?
how beautiful. I think we as humans don't realize that one each finger that we move, or how we take each ourselves for sitting for granted, or everything we do, but how we have learned everything. It's all a learning and process, and how your brain evolves and how you learn, and how this journey is as a human being, and we continue to learn. And I think we have to understand that the brain is an amazing organ, and you'll continue to evolve. So always keep learning, never stop that process in whatever way. And learning doesn't mean you have to study books. I think everything,
Yeah.
like whether it's, I'm telling you, like you make cheese fresh out of milk, I think that's amazing, right? Like how many people, that's a journey just to learn that.
Yeah.
Like how many
Yeah.
people can do that, and when people learn that, it's an amazing
It
thing.
really is a different world. You feel like a mad scientist, right? Because you think of something and you are like, अच्छा ये कैसे होता है? And finally, when you're like, okay, fine, let's do it.
Yeah,
And you're
correct,
in it before you know it. And I think that's what has
exactly.
happened with you also
Yeah,
when you've
yeah,
started your different ventures, the
correct,
different things that you are doing all at once.
right,
Like, it's
right.
phenomenal.
No, so I think it's all balancing. At this point, yes, we are practicing full time. We are managing our hospital as well, part of the management team. It's always a team, I think, that people have to remember. Managing the college part, the education vertical I manage, so that we are managing. Then we have a senior and so we have a pharmacy, nursing, and paramedical college in Greater Noida. So that's kind of been my baby for the past 6 years. So that I've been managing, and it's been a great experience. I think I've learned a lot with that
You were
journey as
doing
well.
that while you were struggling with getting pregnant.
Yeah. I was practicing. I was working as as in a leadership position at the hospital. I was working in managing our education vertical as well, and of course trying to get pregnant. So all that was happening at the same time. So we all get frustrated, and there are moments we all want to scream out loud. We all want to go on top of a mountain and just be like, let me be. I think we all go through that emotion, at least I have, and I think there are moments I still do. Right now, managing everything, plus have managing uh, my kid, and then taking out time. I don't want to miss his moments also, and I want to be there. But I think that's where when people say, "Oh, I have done everything on my own," it never is on your own. It's always a team. It's always your support system, and that's why. Always ask out for. I think never hesitate asking for help because it is your support system. Eventually, yes, you are doing it, but with that support system. I'm sitting here today because my nanny is there. I have a trustworthy nanny who can take care of my child. Otherwise, how will I do it? Right, so you make your support systems, you find that balance, right? Like my niece is coming over today, so they'll be spending time. We went to summer camp. I enrolled them in a summer camp. I'm a big believer that kids, you should expose them as soon as possible, because the brain is so malleable. They really catch a lot and they really learn a lot. So this mindset, वो अभी छोटा है, अभी कितना क्यों पढ़ा रहे हो? पूरी जिंदगी है पढ़ाई के लिए, ऐसा नहीं है. These kids love learning. This age group is such, they love learning. So I would say to anyone and everyone who's watching this, please expose your kids to as much education in any form as possible, and less screen time in terms of showing them all these random shows. Sometimes you see kids watch very random shows. It's okay to give a little screen time because you're human, and as parents nowadays we are a little dependent, but limit it to more educational shows, and you will see the difference of how kids learn and all of that. But balancing is the key, because still there are days where you're living in guilt. I think forever in guilt. I perpetually live in mother's guilt. But
I think that's natural. But then, how do you balance between so many ventures of yours? Of course, even they are like your babies, right? How do you take out time from those 24 hours that you have in a day apart from being a mother?
I think you just have to have you have to plan. The best way to do it is go in a planned way. You cannot be haphazard that today I'll do this and let me do that. Everything goes in a little bit of a planned manner. You allot your time and stick to that. Allot your plans and you kind of stick to that. Like Fridays, I usually come to Gurgaon anyhow, because we have another venture called Aurum, which is senior and assisted living space. So Fridays we have dedicated to that day. Like at least I've dedicated that day to that. Rest of the days I've dedicated to my practice. And, out of that, few times a month I dedicate to the education vertical. So I've now created systems in place that I know that they are running on an autopilot, where I know that my team will reach out to me and I reach out to them. We stay in touch, but my physical presence at every location is not needed. And that's how that balance is created. If my child has a birthday party to attend to, I will take that time out. If he has a parent teachers meeting, I'll put it in my schedule. But I think my survival is my calendar and my scheduling and my planning. I'm a planner. I think I love to plan. I live by that. So it gets very difficult if I cannot plan. So I'm not a good person to surprise, I think. Uh, I like to know what's going to happen. My husband tried planning my 40th, and poor guy, he had a rough time because I'm the planner between
Yeah.
the two. So I was like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" He's like, "Leave me alone." And I'm like, "No, no, no, I need to know." So I think you become such a
Yeah.
planner, and I think I'm a planner, and
And how do you react if things don't go as planned?
you you just say, okay, what can you do? I mean, you can't get angry. You learn over time. I think they initially in your life you react,
Yeah.
you get angry, and then maybe 10 years ago I would be like that, but then as you grow older, when you're younger, it's your parents being calmer in a lot of situations where you're angry and you don't understand why they are calm, but then you become that person eventually, where you also stop reacting that way. You learn that the best thing is whenever you feel upset, I think for anyone, is to actually not react at that time. A lot of times people react right away. Is to actually take a deep breath, think for 10 seconds, and or just step away from that situation at that point and see how would you actually react, and you figure out and look from both perspectives. Nobody is doing something on purpose. A lot of times nobody is messing up on purpose. It is situations which might be causing it. So I think when you look at something from both perspectives, you become more calmer. So I've learned over. It's not that I was born calm and I was doing it. I've had my reactions, I think, in my life, and I've reacted. But then you learn slowly and steadily to maybe not react so quickly, and how to take a deep breath, how to, and then move forward, and you have to balance it out. And I think having a child, once I was on a panel discussion, and it was something that really stood in my mind, that the panelist over there was a very senior psychiatrist, and he said the biggest problem, mistake that parents do is they fight in front of their child, but they don't make up in front of their child. Now think about it. So the child has seen the fight, but they've not seen that makeup happen, where they've maybe said sorry to each other. So, firstly, avoid fighting in front of your kid as much as possible. Don't shout. Move away from that situation. But in case you do, then make up. So kids learn that fights do end. And that's a part of a normal, healthy relationship. It's okay to fight. We fight with each other. You fight with your siblings, you fight with your parents, arguing. It's basically arguing. You argue with your spouses, partners, work partners, whoever it is. That's normal, right? But always end it. So I think that is something that really kind of stuck in my head, that, don't react. And I would say I would give credit to my child. I think ever since he's come into our lives, I do make an effort not to maybe get upset in front of him. And I think that automatically then goes into my other life as well, where I think that has kind of transpired. So I think that's how it is. But yeah, but a lot of time things don't go your way. And as you said, it's never a perfect life, right? Everybody wants that perfect day, perfect life, but things don't go. And I think everybody just needs to learn that it didn't
It's
work out, it
okay.
didn't work out. It's okay. That's okay. It's not the end of the
Yeah.
world. Pick up the pieces and start again.
Yeah. I think moving forward is the only way, right? So, since you said now what, you started as a professional and then you switched it to being an entrepreneur, and now you are doing these really nice things for the society, right? You are building assisted living centers, you are opening pharmacy colleges, institutions, and all. Again, I'll come back to it because it's a lot for me to process. But within the time that you're given, how do you even think of the new venture? How do you plan it? How do you even bring it to the execution mode? Like, what goes behind all of it?
So me and my husband, we do a lot of work together, and so yeah. So I think you kind of balance, right? It's always a team. Like when obviously, hospitals were already there, right? My dad started Metro Group of Hospitals, so that was already there. And then you kind of get into that mode, and education vertical, yes. I helped develop. We had just had a nursing college and a few paramedical courses when I started out. We started pharmacy. Now we're coming up with a university. So all that is going on. And then I think once you become an entrepreneur, your brain kind of goes. So when Aurum, so like my father-in-law always had this dream of setting up a space for seniors. So then, we all kind of got together, and we decided to make that dream a reality, kind of understanding, like, a lot of centers were visited all over the world to kind of see how these places run. And then I think once you make up your mind, give it your best shot. not everything maybe can be planned at that point. And I think what people need to understand, a lot of times, a lot of people want to become entrepreneurs. I think that's again a new fashion. Like everybody wants to have their own startup culture, do their thing, but 15% are successful. We know the data. Not everything goes the way it is because it requires a lot of hard work. It requires planning and it requires failing and succeeding, taking wrong decisions and succeeding and not giving up. So again, as you said, moving forward. So I think when these ideas come, you know, if you can do something, and there will be maybe we have 10 ideas. Out of that, we choose maybe one is something we can do right now, and we do that. You know, because we know we have to balance it out. And for us, end of the day, we don't forget that we are clinicians. My patients are still something that give me the most happiness. I might be doing multiple leadership roles, but what makes me happy is actually treating my patients. I know I have a different skip in my step the day I'm seeing patients or when I'm rounding in the hospital, because there you get a direct feel of helping people out and just talking to them, just seeing that smile on their face or just seeing that satisfaction that some way you've helped somebody out. It's so heartwarming.
Yeah.
It's difficult to describe. And I think as doctors, somewhere you get addicted to that feeling also. And I think that's why doctors keep on striving, usually, a lot of them, to continue working harder and harder because you get addicted to that feeling of giving that happiness. When people who do charity or into a lot of philanthropic
Yeah.
activities, why do they do that? It gives them happiness too. You're helping people out, but you're also getting happy. Even that is an addicting feeling, I think. So, I think it just happens. I can't even describe. I think when you're in that moment, in that flow, you start doing things and things just fall and you meet your challenges, but you go on. And not everything will work according to plan. You'll have ups and downs, you'll have fights, you'll have arguments, you'll make wrong
Like
decisions.
you work in partnership with your
Yeah,
husband,
right.
and that's not
So
easy. Like
no.
obviously, when you're in a relationship, anyway, you have so many emotional conflicts, right, day
Exactly.
to day
Yeah,
basis. And now when you're working professionally, uh, what does it take to make it work?
I think patience, listening to each other, and not uh, reacting right away. We do have arguments, we disagree on things, we agree on a lot of things, we disagree on a lot of things, but at the end of the day, we know that we are working together and we are able to work together. But there will be times when maybe it may not be as smooth, but you kind of work around it. You know that, okay, at least as long as your goals are aligned, as long as you're striving for the same thing, you will kind of work towards it. And I think, but patience is virtue. I think over these years of working together, we both have realized patience. If one is upset, the other should take a step back. There's no point of both of us screaming and trying to one person has to take a step back or maybe get quiet, because the moment that one person gets quiet, the other will also quieten down because you're not getting a reaction that you're expecting. And learn to disagree, learn agree to disagree, and it's okay. Yeah.
This is a mature partnership, but initially when you started working with him, it wouldn't have been this easy, like
No,
how you're
not at
making
all.
it
Ask
sound.
him. When you'll ask him, he'll be like, no, not at all. And as women, I think as a female or a woman in this, of course, you have a lot of responsibilities. Both our families are based out of Delhi, so you're balancing families, you're balancing family dynamics, you're balancing work, and then you're working together. So you're together all the time, and so I think it's important to get that me time. And it's not easy initially; it does take time, but then I think you get into the flow of it. That's what I think. Life is a journey where we all keep on learning as we come together, right? It's like two friends working together initially. Things may work out, but then you have arguments with your friends. Things, not everybody might agree with the same ideas. Eventually what happens is you don't view your husband as a husband at that point. Or your partner as a wife. You start viewing each other as partners. So, and then that's a different phenomena, right? Personal, you keep separate. Professional, you have to keep sometimes separate. And you try not to bring work always at home. You try your best to kind of take out that me time for each other where it's just the two of you. And I think all those balances work, but it's not easy. And I think we always laugh and we say that to each other that it's not easy working together. And, but it's, you learn how to maneuver around it. And I think we've seen our parents, by chance, both the sides, both sets of parents also work together. So I think that's why they both have grown their institutions together. Where whether it's our hospital, my mom and dad, they work together, and it's not like they're together all, but they are both working in the same place. Same with again my mother-in-law, father-in-law. So I think we kind of have seen that also. But I don't see as many people of our generation working together a lot of times. It's hard. It is hard. Over 100%. I think women now, we have our say. We want, there's no reason of we are any, we're as educated, achieved as much, plus we're much, we're saying we're doing more, we're taking care of a household also, we're taking care of a child also. So definitely expectations are more from women, and it is more difficult, and I would say it is more difficult, and I have no qualms about saying it.
Yeah.
It is more difficult, and a lot of women are like, Why can't men be like this, and why can't men be," it's an ideal world. Why can't is
Yeah.
another ideal thing.
What
What
if?
if it
Yeah.
comes to what if? What if it was perfect? Then great. But you see that balance in some people. But I think for majority, women do struggle a little bit more in balancing, and it's not
Yeah.
easy. And there are days when you come back, end of the day, you just want to put your head on the pillow and you're just exhausted, and then it hits you how tired you are. It's your adrenaline rush that
Yeah.
keeps you going. Then finally, when it hits you, then you realize how exhausted you are. And I think that's another thing we see. People are just
Too much. Like fatigue is for real. And I don't know, I think no one is really addressing it. They'll just make fun of you कि अच्छा ये तो हमेशा ही थका रहता है, हमेशा थकी रहती है.
right. But fatigue is for real, Apeksha, and there are medical causes, of course. We know that in India, vitamin D and B deficiency are very common. B12 deficiency, D3 deficiency, they do contribute. But apart from that, I think sometimes lack of exercise, mental stress. People don't realize the amount of mental stress that causes fatigue, how it affects your neurochemicals. Nobody realizes that. So it's real. Post COVID, I've noticed a lot of fatigue in people. So definitely COVID has impacted, mild or severe, it doesn't matter. At some point it has impacted people where they are more tired, they are not as crisp as they were, they don't feel the same, but nobody can pinpoint what it is for us to say that this is what it is. But now, 2 3 years down the line, when we're getting studies out, we're getting data out, we are seeing that yes, it is it does matter. And I think fatigue is one thing people should address. What can people do for it? They should get their blood work done. Supplements is one part of it, but then exercising, yoga does help because it does get good chemicals going. So unless you have a true medical reason to not work out, please do exercise. Again, one of the do sleep. People don't sleep; they're on their phone.
They wake
How
up
many?
looking at the
Yeah,
phones, they sleep looking at the
they sleep
phones.
looking at the phone every night. Everybody's doing this
Yeah.
on their phone for
Yeah.
an hour. People sleep at 1, they wake up at 6. 5 hours of sleep is not enough. Your body is not able to recover. Sleep is very important for recovery. So I would say even if people started sleeping well, exercising regularly, and eating healthy. Nowadays, our diets are horrible. We just don't know what's inside. We just don't know what preservatives we all are taking. Every day, new data comes out. The other day, there was data that now MDH
Yes,
masalas are
masala.
being banned. It has some carcinogenic stuff. And you're like, what do I eat and what do I not eat? People have started pulling their hair out that everything is cancerous.
True.
Then what do we eat? What do we not? But I think try your best to be as healthy as possible. And don't forget the basics of good sleep, regular exercise, and eating healthy. And I think when people follow that, they do notice a difference. But and be patient. People want instant gratification. I've done it for 2 weeks. It's nothing has
Yeah.
happened. Oh, it will now not happen for it's 3 months. Do regular good sleep, regular exercise, and good eating for 3 months. Then you will notice a
Months का
difference.
time नहीं है ना.
Nobody has 3 months.
Seriously. Yeah,
Yeah,
3 months
yeah.
sounds like a long time.
Yeah, it does, right?
कि
Yeah.
नहीं हो पाएगा. Even if you
Like,
say 3 weeks, that's
yeah.
also a long time.
Correct, correct. And that's the thing, and nobody wants to take out that time. But people who do it are those Instagrammers we see who show that they've had a great, but they've actually been consistent. Consistency is key in anything you do, whether it's working, whether it's taking care of your family, whether it's taking out time for yourself. And I think that's another important thing. In all of this, of what maybe I do or other people do in their lives when they're working all the time, is you have to take out me time. There is no excuse. It's okay. Don't feel guilty. And that's what for me, like working out is my me time.
Yeah.
I work out because that's those 45 minutes or an hour is my time. And that's only for me. And I'm doing it for myself. When you work out, who are you doing?
Yeah, it's for you. Do you think it strengthens your mind? Because, like you mentioned about the COVID time, you mentioned about the people who come up to you with underlying mental health conditions. uh Women in nature, right, they're more emotional, right? You really have to strengthen your mind to deal with these people so as not to get affected yourself. So how did you strengthen your mind, and like, how do you keep yourself less emotionally attached to your patients?
I think over the years, you just get wired that ways. Because you wake up in the morning wanting to do the best for your patient. But in the field of medicine, you get used to failure, and not on purpose, but it does happen. Sometimes you do your best, but things were not meant to work out, and it does affect you. So it's not that it doesn't affect people. Doctors, I think, are very brave when they say that death doesn't affect them. It does. I think every patient we lose or every time we fail, it affects us. But I think we're able to overcome it more quickly because we know we have to overcome it. So it's not that it doesn't affect us, it does. And there will be moments we feel sad, we feel disheartened, and we take that time to overcome it, but we don't show it because we know we're not supposed to show it, right? But internally everybody will see it. Even till date I'll see, with both my dads, where I know if a patient hasn't worked out according to what they, you see that they do get affected, and they've been practicing now for 40 odd years, both of them. So more than that, right? So you would expect that, oh, they're wired that way, that nahi farak padta, nahi farak padta. I think हमेशा फर्क पड़ता है. You just learn how to get over it and move on. And then again, it comes down to move on. And it's very interesting, right? Like women are taken to be more emotional, which is true, but women are more brave and stronger than men when it comes to emotions. Mm, women handle it better. Women are actually multitaskers. Our brains are just wired differently to multitask. And it's not only at the level of humans, it's at the level of animals also. Why do we see uh, females only taking care of the babies and feeding and doing other things? So it's just how we are wired. I think multitasking comes naturally, but I've always noticed women are definitely stronger. When we come to the lower strata of our society, a lot of times women come in where the men are not working. How many households we have? When our house helps come, where the men are not working, the women are working, they're running their entire household. And these ladies have five kids. And they're cleaning house after house. Look how resilient they are. I mean, I admire. मुझे मतलब genuinely I feel that what we are doing a different role, yes, but it's amazing. And they're running their households, taking care of their kids, maybe going back to the husband who's drunk, and still
And
fight,
who will beat them
who is
up?
beating them up, and still getting up the next day and fight and working again, and again striving for their family. So I think there are so many inspirations in this world, and how hard people work and how hard women take, do. And I think it's at all levels and not all straight up. Everybody's striving, but definitely I feel women are more emotional, but they're definitely also more strong.
Wow. So, yeah, like, I think there's a lot to learn from every interaction. And the patients that you meet who are from different strata of the society, who are struggling with different conditions, do you think that they help you keep grounded and they always remind you to be in a state of gratitude?
You know, I think that's true, right? You always, I think we are in a field where you just see so much pain all the time. Like whoever comes to the hospital, except who is coming for maybe for a delivery, they're the only happy people that walk in, I always say. Everybody else, whoever comes in, is in pain. And you see people of all strata all the time. And you, I think, learn to appreciate life. You learn how to be thankful, gratitude. Again, I think that is so important. Gratitude is something, again, people don't practice. but people should learn to practice. And I think that's what keeps you humble. Why हवा किस बात की है? When people have this air and all that, what have you done? What have you achieved? And even if you have, and you'll see the people who've achieved the most are always the most humble people.
Yeah, you are one of the biggest
No,
example.
no,
Like one can't really tell the things that you
no,
achieve.
no. I think my achievements are very small compared to what people do, and there's so many people I admire and where they are. But it's important to be humble. It's important to be grounded. It's important to be aware of time. Time today is with you, tomorrow it will not. Journey success is always up and down. How many companies we see go up, they come down, then they go back up again. So many examples around us of people. So I think always remember that you're maybe excelling in what you're doing, but there's no reason to always respect everyone. Every role is important. If we didn't have a housekeeping team, how will our organization speak clean? If we didn't have a security guard, how will who will protect us? We didn't have maybe a marketing person who will do all that. Every person is important. Every role is important. When you're taking care of a patient, starting from the doctors, sorry doctors, everybody says doctors, but it's the entire team. Not just the doctors, the nurses are there with them all the time. The doctors might spend those 10-20 minutes and say do this, but the nurse is striving, they're taking care. The GDAs who are there, who are coming in, cleaning them up, who are sponging them, who are helping get lifting them up, taking them to the toilet, bringing them back. The physiotherapist who's making them do that exercise so they recover quickly. You know, the paramedical staff who's taking their blood. Every person is important. So, what are we? What are we without our teams? What are we without each other? So why you have to stay grounded? There's no reason to, because you're nothing without. I think everything is your team. It's all a family. We don't realize whether we're at work, whether we're at home, even in those subtle things. We all are a family. Our house helps. I always say that, maybe we are linked with them. Some of them are working for 20 years with us. What a bond. We're not close to our relatives, we're close to them. Though we see them day in and day out. They take care of us. They cook food for us. They clean our house. Yes, we are paying them, but it is what it is, right? It's still a bond. So I think it's important to respect everyone, respect each person. And I think that's where, when you hear episodes like what happened in Pune, it's so
Scary.
sad. It just breaks your heart to see that why does this transpire to begin with? Like, where I think more than what has happened post, it is important to see
Yeah.
why did the pre happen to begin with, and how important is for parents now, with this culture coming up of letting their kids party away, drugs. How common have drugs become?
I think these accidents are common. They've become so common that there's no value attached to lives anymore.
I mean, why are you driving if you've had a drink? Firstly, why are you drinking when you're 17? Okay, now, okay, it's a cultural thing. As people say, it's the new thing. Okay, fine. Why are you driving? You have a driver with you. Uber it. There's a reason Uber. I mean, that's how it works. So why? And while I was coming, I was just reading the Yahoo CEO. You know, her son died. In February he was found, and he was only 19, and the cause has just come out: drug overdose. And he was on amphetamines, cocaine, hydroxyzine, and alprazolam. And you're like, this young, and he was a brilliant math genius. Life cut so short. So this new drug culture has become a very big problem, and I think at a certain level everybody's chosen to ignore it and not maybe address it, because nobody knows how to address it.
Yeah, I think other countries are legalizing it more. Like I was reading, I think UK is legal. Some part of UK is legalizing drug use now. Well,
Yes,
because you are unable to control it. Even yesterday, I was reading about the amount of drug that has been seized from Punjab in the
imagine,
last 10 years.
imagine,
It is crazy. The numbers are mad.
just imagine these kids, these young lives that have been ruined, and It's just a sad situation. Unfortunately, I think it's always been there. It's just that now I think we are becoming more aware about it. It's not that it was not there. And definitely by legalizing drug use housing, I think it's become more acceptable. Vaping has become so
Yeah.
common and so much more acceptable, which shouldn't be.
Every person has a vape in their pockets. They're vaping in boardrooms. Like, I think the respect for work culture is also going away that way.
Is right. And I think at a certain level, people need to understand we just don't know what's going to happen 20, 30 years down the line. Climate change isn't helping. What's going to happen to all of us when we are 20 years post? Nobody thinks of that also. But it all adds up. Look at the rate of cancer that's increasing. The number of people suffering from cancer has gone up so much. Detection has gone up, no doubt. So we are finding more new people. But the fact is that it's become much more common.
But the kinds of cancer that are coming up as well, they were never heard
Correct.
of before. Like, it's weird. You'll see a person with a healthy lifestyle. You'll see a person who would have never smoked in his life developing mouth
Yeah.
cancer, lung
Yeah.
cancer.
And that is where then the person who's smoking says, if anyhow that person who has not smoked has
Yeah,
gotten it,
I might
I
as well
might
do
as well do.
it.
So that's where that conundrum and that challenge comes, that what do you do and what do you tell people. But you know, the data says that if you will do it, then the chances are that you'll get it more. You know, sometimes it's genetics, sometimes it's environment. For people like us who all are sitting in Delhi NCR,
Nelly.
what are we doing? We are in this smoke house of sorts, and we know the difference when we travel, that what we are living in. That's the time when it hits us, right? I'm sure every time you travel and when you take that clean air in is when it probably hits you that what we are living in. We till that we don't realize. At least that's how I realize it, right? Every time I take in clean air, I'm like, oh my god, what am
You feel fresh from inside. This happened with me in December. Like, so I don't know, very reactive to the pollution. I'm allergic to it. I was on 5 rounds of antibiotics for those 3 months. And I had to go to South for a wedding. And I was really unwell. I couldn't even get up without coughing or sneezing. I got on the flight. The minute I landed in South, it was fine.
imagine
I was fine for those 3 days. The minute I landed back in Delhi, I was sick as ever.
what it is. I mean, we don't realize it that what we are. So pollution just doesn't affect our lungs. It's causing more headaches. It's causing more high blood pressure. It's causing fatigue. You know, I remember when we used to do a show for NDTV called Doctors on Call, which was a very fun stint we had with them. Our second episode was on air purifiers, and that was the peak pollution time. And we had gone to Breathe Easy is the company, and they have a center in Nehru Place. So we had gone there, and there their AQI was 4. So I remember sitting, and it was peak. You know, usually at 3 o'clock, everybody gets feels a little drowsy and tired. And I remember I was feeling absolutely fine. And we told him, we told Barun, we said we're not feeling tired. He said that's the effect of air. And I've recently traveled. I traveled, and when I traveled, that place had clean air. And you will not believe I was not tired. I was not, and that is when it really hit me this time that how much pollution impacts you. I was not tired. I was not heavy headed. I wasn't feeling that fatigue, which I usually feel on a day to day basis. I also have allergies from pollution. I think a lot of us do. My voice has changed due to COVID and allergies over the years. So I had a very different voice. So people who hear my voice after ages say, "What happened to your voice?" It's completely changed. Yeah. So it's become much more deeper. It was not as a deep of a voice that I had before, but
It's
it's what
crazy.
we are
Like,
living in, right? Environment
environment is really
is really
impacting us
impacting us
because we've
because we've
impacted the
impacted the
environment.
environment, right? So
Yeah, it's a
it's a
full
full
circle of
circle of
life.
life. It is. It's hitting us now.
Yeah, we're
Yeah, we're
feeling it.
feeling it for sure.
Yeah. So sorry, but I think the last bit would be that what's next for you because you don't stop. You really don't stop. I think you're working round the
Yeah,
clock on newer
yeah.
things and you're just everywhere.
No, so what next? I think we are working on opening. We've just opened a second center. We're just going to be opening a second center for Aurum in Gurgaon. And so that's in terms of work front, that's what next. And we're coming up with a university, Metro University in Greater Noida. So that's happening on both the sides. And then I think personal is continue to grow and evolve. And I hope, I think if I could, if you give me, oh, what is one thing you would love to do? I think I would love to join a book club so I can start reading a little bit more. I think one thing I really miss is not being able to read. And I feel maybe if I join a book club, at least I'll take out that time to read. But I think that's in terms of professional, that's what's coming up in my life right now. And professional, I think personal, take it as it comes, spend time with my
But
family.
personally, you don't take out time for yourself. Like you said, you would like to join a
Yeah,
book club. It's reading 20 minutes a day, is that not the amount of time that you can spare for yourself?
don't, right? We should, but a lot of times we are, I think, so tired end of the day that we again, the phones have taken over our lives. We end up spending those 20 minutes unfortunately on social media than books. And I'm guilty of that as well. I think I'm just so tired, and I talk to all my friends with young kids too, and all these moms, after the kids sleep, I think everybody takes out half an hour on their Netflix, or and they're watching it on their phones. They're not even watching it on the television, just to have 20 minutes of peace or 20 minutes of me time of sorts. But I would love to read if I can. I mean, I should take out time, so that would be something. And of course, I think always try to be healthy, because at least make your efforts. Rest, of course, you can't predict the path life goes all the time, but I think try to do your best, be a good human being, be kind, help as much as possible, and never forget, your roots and where you come from. I think all that is what is important.